So I woke up that July morning to a sunny, beautiful day, and the last thing you expect to hear on a sunny day in southeast Alaska is that your river's flooding. We were surprised because we really didn't have any rain to speak of in the week previous, and the river was rising and rising. We didn't have good understanding as to why.
We didn't know where the flood was coming from, but we suspected it was a glacier lake outburst flood, originating from an ice dam lake known as Suicide Basin.
As a group of us that jumped into a helicopter, we started flying up the Mendenhall Valley, and I remember very clearly seeing people standing in yards, standing on their bridges, looking out at this flood. So when we arrived at the basin, it was quickly apparent that this was in fact the source of the flood. We could see that the ice in the basin had collapsed down. There were stranded icebergs indicating the old water line at the beginning of the flood. We landed the helicopter. The ice was actually still cracking around us because the basin was still settling, and it was pretty clear that the peak of the flood had already passed because the basin was mostly drained.
So what's happened with this basin is that the Suicide Glacier, which is now perched up at the top of the cliff, used to flow down the cliff and through the basin and join up with the Mendenhall Glacier. When that was the case, there was no room for meltwater to store in the basin. But since that time, the Suicide Glacier has pulled back out of the basin and up the cliff, and so it's perched up at the top of the cliff, and all the meltwater from Suicide Glacier is flowing down that waterfall into the basin here. And that's what's driving the filling of the basin, which then leads to the flood. So the meltwater from Suicide coming down the waterfall, filling up the basin. The main glacier is acting like a dam. And when you get enough water in here, the basin, the water pressure in the basin can actually lift the main glacier up, and then the water is released under the glacier, just like we saw here today.
To effectively manage the hazard associated with the Suicide Basin outburst flood, we need to be able to make accurate predictions about the timing and the magnitude of the flood. To do this, we need to understand the ice dynamics in the basin, both how they've changed in the past and how they'll continue to change in the future.